At 68 years old, Rosa was asked to leave the house by her daughter, Clara. There were no screams, no dramatic scenes, just the dry click of the doorknob closing, a click that said more than 1,000 words. She walked out with 2 old suitcases, one in each hand. No wheels, heavy, made of thick canvas and stretched seams. She lifted them with effort, back straight, chest tight. She carried only what she wore, and a wounded, yet intact, dignity. Clara avoided looking her in the eyes. She stood at the doorway, arms crossed, face tense. Behind her, Jorge, her husband, held the baby as if nothing was happening. "Mom, we've talked about this. We can't keep taking care of you," Clara said in a flat voice, emotionless. Rosa didn't respond. She had stopped counting the times she had given up her own bread for her daughter. She had worked under the sun, under the rain, cleaning houses, scrubbing floors, washing other people's clothes until her hands were raw, all for her. And now, not even a hug, not a single tear, just the cold of a closed door. She walked away slowly, dragging more than just suitcases. She was dragging her soul. When she turned the corner and was out of sight, she let out a deep sigh. And then, finally, she broke down in tears, silent, painful. She wasn't crying from sadness, but from something deeper, being forgotten. She set the suitcases down for a moment, covered her face with her hands. No one could see her, so she could finally cry. What Clara didn't know, what no one knew, was that Rosa hadn't been fired. She had retired by choice. The pain in her hands no longer allowed her to fold clothes without feeling her bones crack. Her former boss had offered to keep paying her for lighter tasks, but Rosa chose to leave with her head held high. Inside her purse, wrapped between old papers and a torn notebook, she kept a bank card. In her name, the account had existed for 23 years, since she inherited a forgotten piece of land on the outskirts of the city. Everyone told her to sell it, that it was worthless, that it had no water, no electricity, no future. But Rosa held on. She paid taxes year after year, even when she had to pawn her wedding ring. 2 months before she was kicked out, an engineer arrived looking for the lady who owned that land. They were building a railway line. They offered her a $1 million deal. Rosa asked only one question: "Can this remain private?" 3 weeks later, $1.7 million were transferred to a quiet account managed by an anonymous foundation. She said nothing, not to Clara, not to Jorge. That night, she didn't stay in a hotel. She went to a shelter for elderly women in the San Lorenzo neighborhood, not because she needed to, but because that's where others like her were, women forgotten by their families, but not defeated. She shared her dinner with a toothless woman, listened to similar stories, and for the first time in years, she felt seen. The next day, she walked to an old house covered in weeds, broken windows, collapsed roof, a skeleton of what once was. She bought it in cash. No one knew it was her. A month later, under the name Son of Hope Inc., the place was reborn. New roofs, clean beds, hot water, equipped kitchen, solar panels, and above all, hope. No one knew who paid for it, and that was exactly how Rosa wanted it. She wasn't looking for revenge. She didn't want applause or recognition. Her only wish was to create a place where no one would be discarded for growing old, falling ill, or no longer being useful. She began visiting public hospitals, nursing homes, soup kitchens. She helped without giving her name, through faceless foundations. With every donation, she left a handwritten note: "Let no one be left behind." A year later, she officially opened the dining hall La Mesa de Rosa. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. There was warm bread, comforting soup, and volunteers with a tin of ears. No one had to identify themselves. No paperwork, no explanations were required. Just one sign at the entrance said it all: "Everyone has a place here." Meanwhile, Claire's life took another turn. First came the rent increase. Then, Jorge lost his job. The baby got sick. Bills piled up. Every day became harder. Clara looked for help from friends, acquaintances, family, but everyone shut their doors. One night, Jorge left. He didn't leave a note, only an audio message. "I can't go on like this." Clara sold what little she had left. With no options, she ended up in a shelter, her son in her arm. One afternoon, wandering aimlessly with a hot water bottle and a bag of diapers, she saw a white wall. On it, words handwritten: "La Mesa de Rosa. Everyone has a place here." She stepped inside. The smell of baked bread wrapped around her like a blanket. Children laughed. Elderly folks played dominoes. a short woman with dark skin and a firm gaze, served soup with steady hands. Clara didn't recognize her at first, but Rosa did. She said nothing. She simply placed a plate in front of her. Clara looked at her, bewildered, and broke into tears. Rosa didn't hug her or scold her. She just murmured, "It's cold, stay." And for the first time, Clara understood everything her mother had done. That was just the beginning. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. In a room on the second floor, under a hand-woven blanket and with her son beside her, she stared at the ceiling for hours. The cold didn't come from outside, but from within. Memories flooded her. Her mother's rough hands washing clothes, ironing her school uniform, the warm laughter when she made rice pudding, and above all, that unforgettable image. Her mother walking away in silence, with 2 old suitcases. She thought about asking for forgiveness, about explaining that everything had spiraled out of control, but she knew that sometimes wounds caused by indifference can't be healed with words, even when there's love. The next morning, she went down to the kitchen. Rosa wasn't there. A young woman with a kind face offered her coffee and fresh bread. Clara asked for her mother. "Doña Rosa leaves early," she replied. "Sometimes to the hospital, other times to the community center. She always comes back before nightfall." Clara offered to help. She washed dishes, wiped tables, swept the floor. It was the least she could do. As she worked, she observed. The volunteers moved in harmonino chaos, no shouting. Everything had a purpose, to make others feel they mattered. 3 days passed. Clara, in silence, kept busy. Her son played in the garden with other children under the sun. Rosa would arrive in the afternoons, keeping her distance. She'd greet them, ask how things were going, and move along. Until one Thursday, while Clara scrubbed trays, a familiar voice broke the silence. "You're making them spotless." It was her mother, standing there with a clean apron and a bag of vegetables. Clara turned, unsure of what to say. "Mom." Rosa lifted her head slightly to interrupt her. "Have you eaten?" Clara nodded. Rosa set the bag down, took out tomatoes, carrots, and garlic. "You still like to cook, don't you?" Clara looked down at her rough hands. "Yes," sometimes she replied, with a timid smile, then put on an apron. "Today we're making lentils." It was a simple moment, without drama. But as they chopped onions side by side, something inside Clara broke. Not from sadness, from relief, from the possibility of starting again. That night, after dinner, Rosa took her to a different room, smaller but cozy. 2 clean beds and an improvised crib. "This room is yours, for as long as you need it," she said. "Not because you're my daughter, but because no one should sleep on the street if it can be helped." Clara sat on the bed. "I failed you, Mom." Rosa didn't argue, nor did she deny the truth. She simply sat beside her, took her hand, and said, "And I didn't know how to tell you I was tired." The silence that followed was different from the one in that final goodbye. This silence didn't hurt. It was a silence that allowed healing. "Why didn't you ever tell me about the land? And the money?" Rosa took her time to respond. "Because I needed to know who would stay by my side, even if I had nothing left to give. And was it worth it?" "Look at us," Rosa said with a soft smile. "Here we are, cooking lentils." I guess it was. In the months that followed, Clara became fully involved. She organized literacy workshops, managed donations, redesigned the garden, and created a reading corner. Without realizing it, she became indispensable. Rosa watched from a distance. Clara had changed. She no longer measured life by comfort, but by humanity. One day, while cleaning an old storage room with her mother, she found a wooden box with a rusty padlock. "Can I open it?" she asked. Rosa nodded. Inside, yellowed letters, black and white photos, a notebook, and at the bottom, an envelope. "For my daughter, if she ever looks for me." With trembling hands, she opened it. "Clara, if you're reading this, it means you came back, that something inside you is still beating strong. I'm not writing this so you'll ask for forgiveness. I don't need that. I just want you to remember that love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits in silence, to bloom at the right moment. I only planted the first seeds. Now it's your turn. With everything I was, and everything I still am. Mom." Clara read it 3 times, and by the end, she was no longer the same. 2 years went by. La Mesa de Rosa blossomed. Sewing workshops, music classes, free medical care, community movie nights. Until one day, Rosa handed her a folder. "What's this?" the land papers, and the foundation. They're in your name. Clara didn't understand. Why? Because this was never mine. It belonged to everyone who once felt forgotten. And you know what that feels like. You know how to help them. It's time you take the lead. Clara hugged her, not out of guilt, not in pain, but with the full weight of love that had taken too long to recognize. That autumn, Rosa passed away peacefully, quietly, without drama, just as she had lived. The funeral was simple, but the dining hall was full. Children, elderly, doctors, volunteers, former cleaning staff, all with something in common. Rosa had changed their lives. Clara spoke at the end. In one hand, the letter. In the other, her mother's apron. My mother once walked out a door that closed without a sound, but she opened many others, and she never asked for anything in return. If we're here today, it's because a woman with hands full of scars chose compassion when she could have chosen pride. As they stepped outside, the sun lit up the dining hall's entrance, engraved on the wooden frame. The doors that open are stronger than the ones that close. Clara looked up at the sky, and for the first time, she didn't feel alone. And if you also believe that no mother should ever be forgotten, subscribe. It's free, and there are no excuses. Unless you want to be like Jorge, the one who left when he was needed most. Share this video with someone who needs a lesson in humility. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Rosa's place?